Welcome to Monday Motivation. Now, this podcast is not going to be long enough to even get you to work, but it will give you a lot to work on, because the most important thing you can work on in life is yourself. Welcome back to Monday Motivation. This season is called The Climb, and I'm sharing with you 5 lessons I learned climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, today is the last lesson number 5. And then next week, I'll be interviewing a very special guest who knows more about climbing than anyone I know. So I can't wait for next week. Now, let's do a very quick review. Life is a climb, and if you want to reach your full potential, you have to apply these lessons to your life. Lesson number 1, get a dream. The reason I got to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro is because I decided to do it. The top of that mountain is what I was aiming for. So you can't do everything, but you can do almost anything you set your mind to. So get focused and get after a dream. Lesson number 2, travel light. The higher you want to go, the less you can hold on to. So less is always more. Unclutter your life as much as you can, because meaning and simplicity go together. Now, lesson number 3 was choose the best guide you can. So you have to ask yourself, who am I listening to? You know, I was paying attention to Gotti on that mountain because that guy's been up on that mountain multiple times. Pay attention to who your guide is, because who you pay attention to matters. Now, lesson number 4 was just last week, and we talked about how you have to make sure you're with the right people. And so it's as sure as the law of gravity, who you are around is who you're going to become. So if you introduce me to your friends, you just introduce me to your future. Your friends are your future. Now, lesson number 5, this is a huge day today because it's a big principle. And if you want to get to the top of a mountain, if you want to reach your full potential in life, here it is. Don't give up. Now, here's just one picture from our climb. Listen, every day on our climb of Mount Kilimanjaro, somebody wanted to quit. On the first day, we were going through the jungle and it started raining, and it rained all day as we began the ascent. And by the time we got to the end of that day, it was rainy, miserable. All of our gear got wet. Setting up camp in the rain is not a fun experience. And one of the guys just pulled me aside and said, "Man, I want to go back." The next night, after we got through a whole day of tundra and the air getting thinner and the weather was still dreary, another guy pulled me aside and said, "Listen, I knew this was going to be rough, but this is ridiculous. I don't want to keep going." Every day somebody had a conversation like that with me, not wanting to admit it to the whole group, of course, but definitely wanted to talk it through with me. It was a hard climb. Listen, life is a hard climb. And there's going to be spots in your life when you just feel like giving up. That's when you want to remember lesson number 5. Don't give up. Now, a lot of places on Mount Kilimanjaro, you're definitely tempted to just turn around and stop going. Here's a shot of a long valley, literally thousands of feet down that we had to go through. Took hours to cross. The mountain just literally, just like life, had a lot of surprises at every turn. Check this out. When you get close to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, it may not look like it in the distance, but that is actually a 9-story glacier on top of the mountain. Crazy. A mountain climb, just like life, has a lot of twists and turns. And one of our guys in the group, of course, an engineer, calculated how many steps we did. Now, this is before the app where now everybody knows how many steps you do. From start to finish, you ready for this? To get to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, you only have to take 128,487 steps. Wow, that's a lot of steps. So if listen, you're going to have a lot of steps in life. And some of those steps are going to be in valleys. Life is going to throw you some curves with your health, maybe in your marriage, in your relationships, maybe with your kids, your job. There's going to be some difficult times that you're going to have to go through. And the way you get to your dream is through difficulty. And here's the reality. Everybody wants the view, but very few people are willing to go through the valley to get to the view. And I want to show you an ancient text written by King David. I was just able to be at an archaeological dig last week in Israel that found this palace And a lot of people who doubt the validity of the Bible claim that King David was like King Arthur. Since there was no evidence of his existence outside the Bible, King David, he's just a great idea, but not a real person until 2005. In 2005, an archaeologist discovered King David's palace, an incredible find. And I was able to walk through that just last week, a 3,000-year-old structure. And I want you to look at what this legendary king said in Psalm 23, verse 4. He wrote this: "Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me." Now, in this powerful passage, you find three principles about not giving up. And so here's the first principle. Keep walking through the valley. Listen, don't give up. How do I do that? Keep walking, keep moving. He says, as I walk through the valley. Listen, don't camp in the valley. A lot of people get in trouble when they hit a hard season and they just sit in it. Listen, don't throw a pity party and see who's going to show up. Don't isolate yourself. Don't sit in your despair. A counselor friend of mine that I know deals with clients who struggle with depression. And her professional advice is, you ready for this? She says the quickest way out of depression is to walk out of your apartment, find somebody who needs help, and help them. You see, the point is when you find yourself in a valley, keep moving. Don't stay there. I've been through some real valleys in my life, deep, dark valleys. I've been through circumstances that literally just felt like my whole world, that as I knew it, fell apart. I was not where I wanted to be. I didn't want the cards I've been dealt. You ever been there? We all have. And if you're there right now, listen, I understand. Take one day at a time. And if you're in a really big valley, deep, dark despair, you may need to take 1 hour at a time. Just don't give up. Keep moving. Do something. And so very practically, how do you keep moving through a valley? Man, just do something. Keep moving. Do something for yourself physically. Work out, run. If you don't feel like running, walk, literally through a park, down the street. Emotionally, have one trusted friend. Find somebody you can talk to. And you may need to talk to a counselor. Make sure you're seeing them each week. Spiritually, pray, meditate, even meditate on the psalm like the one we just read. Get in a faith community. Go somewhere once a week that you can be with people who are not looking down, but looking up. And serve. Find somewhere to volunteer. Help somebody somewhere, somehow. And all of these things will give you traction to keep climbing, keep moving, walk through the valley. So that's principle number one. Principle number two of not giving up is just let faith drive your life and not feelings. In other words, feelings, they're good and you're going to have them. But what does King David say? He says, I will not be afraid. What's he saying? I struggle with fear. He's saying, I will not be afraid. You're close beside me. That's a faith statement. I can't see God, but I believe he's close beside me. So when you're going through a valley, listen, every negative emotion that you've ever had will show up. And all of a sudden, there's fear. Fear is a big emotion. I'm afraid. And when we get very vulnerable, like the guys pulling me aside on that mountain, like, you know what? I'm afraid of what people think. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of rejection because rejection is what got me in this valley in the first place. I'm afraid. I'm afraid I can't do this. I'm afraid I'll never recover. I'm afraid I'm not good enough. I'm afraid no one likes me. I'm afraid no one will ever like me. I could go on, but this is supposed to be Monday motivation. So listen, your self-talk is huge. So how am I going to manage my emotions? Faith. He says, listen, I will not be afraid. God is with me. He's close beside me. So lean into faith, especially in valleys. But principle number three is find comfort in God and not guilty pleasures. And I'm not going to list all those either, okay? But he says, your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You see, you can go a lot of places and to a lot of things for comfort that are not going to help you get through the valley. Now, you can go to alcohol, but listen, you can drink, but problems float. They'll be waiting for you. The next morning, you'll just have a headache now. You can go to a gallon of ice cream. It's not going to help. You can binge watch any TV show you want to on Netflix, Amazon Prime. Listen, those things will not comfort you. Now, I'm a doctor, but only my mom calls me that. I have a PhD. That does not matter. When life hit me, it didn't matter what I knew in my head. It mattered what I was going to do. I am not going to give up. I'm going to go to God for strength. I'm going to go to God for protection. I'm going to go to God for comfort. And just sitting there, and sometimes I was mad at God, but I'm still not going to run away from him. I'm going to run to him. I'm going to go to God for strength, protection, comfort, identity, confidence, encouragement. I am going to get through this, but by faith and definitely not by feelings. Now, one of the guys on the trip, he definitely was the group comedian for sure. Here's a picture of him. He's always smiling. He's got his arms out. You know, he's very driven. He's like, I'm going to get to the top. I'm going to raise a lot of money for kids in Ghana. Just a great, inspiring, uplifting, positive guy. He made it to the top of the mountain with all of us. But none of us could have known that he was, very shortly after getting back from Mount Kilimanjaro, was going to get diagnosed with cancer. He went through a 3-year battle with cancer. And you say, well, how did he get through that? I just wanted to give you one example of someone who did exactly what I'm telling you. He didn't give up. He took one step at a time, went through chemo, went through surgery, went through radiation, and repeat. And eventually, not giving up, he walked through that valley and he says, you know what? I'm not going to be afraid. God's with me. He's close beside me. I'm going to go to him for comfort and strength and confidence. And he came out on the other side. He is completely cancer-free now. And he would tell you he couldn't have done that without the guys on the climb and without faith in God. Now, one last example. Let's talk about Rocky movies, okay? They're very realistic, right? One of my favorite Rocky movies is the one with the Russian, okay? Now, listen, don't be jaded. If you don't like Rocky movies, maybe you're like, Micah, Rocky is not realistic. It's just a guy, you know, and there's no realistic. I get it, okay? So it's like a guy training in a state-of-the-art facility, juiced up on steroids, is going to get beat by a guy who's twice, you know, is small and works out in a barn. Okay, so just take a deep breath. Hang with me for the point. My favorite part of the movie is near the end. The last fight. Rocky's in Russia. He's just getting killed by the Russian. I mean, hit after hit, headshot, body blow. It's really actually brutal to watch. And finally, after one massive hit, Rocky goes down and he hits the mat hard. And you just know, man, this is the end of the fight. This is the end of Rocky's career. It may be the end of his life. Now, here's my favorite part. It's when Rocky gets up and the camera pans over to the Russian fighter, Drago, and his face changes to shock and surprise. And at that moment, you know Rocky's going to win. Drago knows Rocky's going to win. Rocky won that fight not when he knocked the Russian out, but when he got up. I don't know what you're battling. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what you're facing right now. I don't know what valley you're walking through, but I do know life has hit me hard, and I didn't feel like getting up. Some days I didn't even feel like getting out of bed. And today, I'm hopefully going to motivate you to shift your mindset today. Get up. Don't give up. Put one foot in front of the other. Make one good decision and then make another good decision. Do the next right thing. Take 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, and you will win at life as long as you don't give up. Listen, you're going to get out of that valley. You're going to get to the top of the mountain. Just don't give up. So today, let me leave you with one more message from the Old Testament from a warrior who predates even King David. His name is Joshua. And he said this, and this is what I'm saying to you. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So today, I just want to encourage you and motivate you with these 3 words. Don't give up. Thank you so much for joining us today on Monday Motivation. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a friend, and we'll see you next week.